Hey guys, we're gonna start working on how to make your art look like it has more depth. We all know that art in painting and drawing is on a flat surface, so you have your height and your width. Those are the two Ds, the two dimensions of two-dimensional art. But good two-dimensional art also has the illusion that it's 3D, that it has depth. So how do we take the three-dimensional world we live in and create the illusion of it onto a surface that's limited to only height and width? That makes things really tricky. So for our purposes today, we're going to look at a historic piece of artwork that will basically allow you to begin to break down some of those simple tricks or techniques that artists use. This one is one that we look at a lot in art because it takes a lot of the tricks and kind of mashes them all together for the first time in art history. This changed the way that people drew and painted from that point forward, and it affects everything from your video game graphics to the CGI in movies to the art on your notebooks and things like that. So we're gonna learn all the tricks now, and I'm gonna have you illustrate them in a really simple way. I don't want you stressing out about this drawing being really amazing or somehow personally meaningful to you. If it ends up being that, that's great, but it's more about just demonstrating these tricks and techniques that I'll be showing you. So my drawing is gonna be kind of goofy looking and simple, and just know that when it's time for you to make yours, you can simply follow exactly the example I did, or change it up a little bit, or you can deviate away from it, as long as you're focused on what are those 5 techniques that Ms. Rainey said we needed to know. And make sure that you not only include the use of them, but that you also know the names of them. You know what I'm talking about if I call them by a certain name and ask you where it's at in your artwork. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, guys, we're looking at Christ handing the keys to Peter. That's just the name of the painting. Of course, there's a story behind it, but this was commissioned by the Catholic Church in Italy in the 1400s. So it had a purpose. It was definitely an important piece historically for a lot of reasons. But the reasons that we need to understand it today is because of the use of depth. There's 5 techniques this artist used that we all need to be using in our art. They're so simple. They don't require really any new skills that you don't already have. They're really more just things you need to be conscientious of and then be intentional about using whenever possible. And it's kind of one of those things where after you know the 5 techniques, if you can use 1 or 2 of them, great. If you can use all 5 of them, then more power to you. Your art's just going to be even more convincing and more interesting to look at. So the first thing I want you to notice is something called position on the picture plane. So the picture plane is the height and width we discussed a minute ago. So obviously, if we were looking at the painting in real life, it would be much, much bigger than this, but there would only be height and width. So when we talk about position on the picture plane, what you need to know is that as a general rule, if you place some kind of imagery low on your picture plane, the flat surface of your image, it's going to create a feeling that those objects are nearer to the viewer. Whereas if you place them high up on the picture plane, they're going to appear further away from the viewer. And the reason why is because that's how reality works. Things that are far away appear to be higher up in our view. So what I want to do now is I want to show you the second trick. The second trick goes hand in hand. Things that are further away appear smaller. Things that are near appear larger. We just call that size trick. So I basically want you to know that obviously there's a lot of examples of things that could be much bigger, but because they were illustrated in a smaller way, they appear further away. They are coupled oftentimes with the position on the picture plane. So an example would be this tree in the background. If I were to take that tree and I were to place it near these people in the front, it would be really small. But we know, because of reality and our experience looking at real life, that that tree is enormous compared to these people. The reason why it's small is because it's high on the picture plane, and we know that that means it's further away. So size and position on the picture plane work hand in hand. Don't forget that. Those are probably the two most powerful and strongest things you can do to create depth in your artwork that I noticed a lot of high schoolers struggle with. It's something that you need to know right at the beginning of your composition when you're beginning to sketch out how your art fills the page. So be thinking about, how can I position things on my page so that they appear to have depth? Okay, and then think about the size relationships between them. Small things at the top of the paper, big things at the bottom of the paper, and suddenly you're going to have depth. Let me go ahead and show you those two tricks all by themselves on paper. So this is just a regular copier paper, and I'm using pencil. If you don't have access to copier paper and pencil, just remember those are things you can pick up at the high school. And just let me know what you need and we'll get those to you so you can follow along and do your assignments from home. So for the two tricks we just discussed, position on the picture plane and size, and how they work kind of together at the beginning of your drawing to establish depth, I just want to go ahead and show you first what some people might be tempted to do. So a really simple way to illustrate this would be to do like quick little Christmas tree shapes. I think most people feel comfortable with something like that. So most people, if I said, okay, draw some kind of landscape or draw a Christmas tree farm or something like that, they might have a row of zigzag shapes, something like this. And maybe they'd even get creative, kind of mix them up, get different styles. There's nothing wrong with this, it's cute, but it's pretty flat. There's not a lot of depth to it, right? So our goal now is to illustrate with not really any more drawing skill than that, those same exact type of images, but with our tricks to enhance the illusion of depth. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that paper and show you what I mean. Okay, so this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to place smaller ones up in the back of the picture. And when I say back, there is no back. So it's high up on the picture plane, of course, and then medium trees in the middle, and larger trees further down the picture plane. And of course, if I really want to sell this idea that, you know, we have a great amount of depth, I might even show one so close that it doesn't even fit completely in the shot. Maybe it's kind of drooping over. It's got some funny branches covered in snow. Okay. And now I'm kind of tempted to go on to one of our other tricks that I haven't even got to yet, so I'm not going to do it. But yeah, guys, so obviously the more you add, the more convincing it is. Ooh, okay. Looking through my iPad as I draw and hold it is kind of funny looking. Now, you can disrupt the order of this quite a bit. Like, let me show you what I mean. If I draw, let me finish that tree. Okay, if I draw, I don't know, a tree next to this medium one that's really close as far as like where it's positioned on the picture plane, but I only make it the size of one of these. What does that tell you? It's not a contradiction. It's not like, oh my gosh, now I can't tell if it's near or far. No, you just assume it's equally as distant from the viewer because it's at the same position on the picture plane. And then you also assume that it's just a younger tree, it's a smaller tree, no big deal. Okay, I'm gonna add one more giant tree kind of peeking into the shot from the side. It doesn't quite fit all the way. This one's really weird looking, isn't it? There we go. Shaggy guy. Okay, so now what I want to do is move on to some of those other tricks, and obviously just know this is a quick example and I'm trying to make it simple so you guys don't feel intimidated. If you haven't been in drawing in forever or any kind of art class, jump right in. If you can draw some shaggy triangles, some funky little trees, you should be able to do this assignment. All right, next trick. So besides position on the picture plane, besides size relationships, you can see that the artist also used what we call layering, and it's so like it's just a simple no-brainer. It's something we take for granted. When we look at this, we probably don't even think of that as a technique. But there are different people blocking our view of other people all throughout the image. And then there's building and architecture blocking our view of the landscape in the background. We don't question that because it matches what we see in reality. But remember our first scenario? We don't draw that way. We tend to line things up. It's more logical and it's clean and it makes sense to, I don't know, the more logical part of our brain. But reality is messier than that. So while this looks okay, there's something about it that kind of just looks like a pattern, like a print. And part of the reason why it's still not that convincing is because it doesn't have any layering going on. There needs to be things blocking other things. The closest I've gotten to it is maybe these front ones because the frame itself is blocking the tree. So let's play around with a little bit of layering. I'm going to throw maybe a littler tree behind this one, just a little bit smaller. Okay, so notice that I positioned it higher on the picture plane just by maybe a little couple centimeters so that it appeared to be behind or further away from this one. Okay, and then I'm going to do that again. Maybe this time I'll draw something in front of something else just to kind of like show it the other way. Okay. So that one's trunk is lower than that one. And now it's blocking it. So of course I can erase the original tree a little bit to make that a little more realistic. And we can continue that concept throughout the whole thing. Okay, so layer up your imagery. Don't keep it side by side clean. Let there be things blocking other things. All right, and the more you do that, the better it's gonna look. Okay, now those are just some, again, little quick examples. Now the next trick we need to discuss is called tonal value. When we say tonal value, you guys typically are thinking the word shading. So if I said, where did the artist use shading? You guys would probably point out the sky, how it goes from intense blue down to faded blue. You'd probably mention the clothing, like the wrinkles in the clothing. That's beautiful use of tonal value. You might notice the building towards the end, just because it is darker on the right side than the left. And all of these things add up to tell us that this is a real place with a real light source, that yes, it may be like the setting or the rising sun, but it's somewhat coming from the left side and it's casting light predominantly on the left side of all of the different people and on the building. So when you're drawing, if you can at least imagine there's a light source and then follow the rule of tonal value by casting shadows on the opposite side, then you'll end up having more dimensional, more realistic looking art. So an example, if we went off of the same light source as this picture, would be to say that all the light's coming from, what I say, the left side, and that means that these sides of all the trees would be the lighter side. And if there were any shadows, it would be on the right side. This is gonna be really hard for me to hurry up and scribble in because I'm looking through my iPad and it's a little delayed. So anyway, guys, you would throw in the shadows on that side, even little clusters of details. Which leads to the last and final trick. Things that are near to the viewer are gonna have more detail than things that are farther away. And again, it's not because reality shows that when you get up to things that are far away, they have no detail. It's just because you can't see them from far away. So again, this is just all logical stuff, but we don't think of it when we're drawing. We just forget these little obvious things. Oh, and don't forget like the trunks of the tree. They may have details in them. They may have more, again, shading on one side. When you go to do your drawing, I want you to know that, again, I'm not looking for an impressive drawing skill set at this point. I just want to know that you understand these concepts. That's it. So if you want to draw stick people or these little cartoon trees, or maybe there's some cartoon you love to draw, that's all good. But I want you to literally go down the list and ask yourself, what are those 5 techniques Miss Rennie said, and then how can I illustrate them pretty quickly for her on one single work of art? Okay, now I'm not going to sit and finish the whole thing, but you can see there's more detail, there's more shading here, maybe just quick scribble back there on that side of the tree, and then I'm going to just leave those completely unfinished, and this tree needs a little more shading and detail over here. But anyway, these things all add up. Let me list them out for you one more time so that you can remember and go through your own checklist. First, position on the picture plane. Show me that you know how to use that to your advantage to create the illusion of depth. Where do the near things go? Where do the far away things go? Okay. 2, you need to think about size relationship. Where do the big things go? Where do the small things go in your picture? 3, layering. Can you create some kind of illusion that maybe one thing is blocking another? 4, can you throw in a little bit of tonal value? Don't worry, I have very minimal expectations on what that looks like. I mean, for goodness sakes, I scribbled like a maniac on these trees, but you get the idea. There's a shadowy side and a light side of each tree. I didn't even do, by the way, what's called a cast shadow. That would be like if the light was really shining hard on the tree, it might have a shadow on that shadowy side being cast upon the ground. That's a whole nother level. Again, I don't have any expectation that you need to do that, but if you like it, go for it, okay? Anyway, tonal value. And then the last and final thing is detail. Throw a few details in the things that are nearer to the viewer at the bottom of the page, and then don't put as much detail in the things that are further back. I don't know what these people look like in the doorway. There is no detail if I zoom in on it, but I can tell what these people are thinking and feeling. I can tell where their eyes are looking and what color and texture their hair is. So those are examples of diminishing detail. All right, guys, that is it. I cannot wait to see what you draw. Let me know if you have any confusion or issues with these 5 techniques, and make sure to upload your drawing to Echo. Thanks, guys.